good morning. It's coming up to 8 AM on Saturday, April the 15th, and I'm just setting out on a Roman road ride from my hometown of Bath. That's Bath Abbey right behind me, and I'm actually outside the site of a former Roman temple. Let me try and explain. This is an artist's impression of an aerial view of the Roman settlement of Sulis, the modern day city of Bath. You can see it's clearly enclosed within this boundary wall, a fortified wall, which has all these entrance and exit points. That would have been South Gate, and directly opposite would be North Gate. Down there's West Gate. I'm going to be starting my journey leaving through, or should I say above, one of the East Gates. More about that later. You can clearly see right in the centre, it's like the spa and the mineral waters complex, and these buildings here would have housed the Roman baths. You can see they're all covered and enclosed with these very grand and spectacular curved roofs. Right outside would be this outdoor square or rectangular courtyard, and there is the site of the Roman temple. So currently I'm stood just to the left of that, or should I say to the north, but more accurately about 20 feet above, because the modern city of Bath is built about 15 to 20 feet above the old Roman settlement of Sulis, Roman Bath. And here are more artists' impressions of what it may have looked like on the ground at the time. So this would be one of the side entrances to the baths, and then you're looking directly head on towards the Roman temple right next door. The very distinctive 4 pillars and that triangular roof. So it's from there, ladies and gentlemen, or should I say just above it, because the modern day bath is built about 20 feet above the old Roman baths and the Roman temple. I'll be starting from somewhere here. So that behind me is the site of the old Roman temple, and that triangular portico at the top, the actual remains, or some of it, not all of it, are actually in the Roman baths. So I'm started from here, a Roman temple, Sulis Minerva. I'm heading out through Bath, through Eastgate, rather over Eastgate, because it's about 20 feet below the present street level, and I'll be heading out to Cleveland Bridge and getting on what is thought to be the Roman route out of Bath with London Road. I've lived in Bath all my life. I was brought up and raised here. I was always aware of the streets, Westgate, Southgate, Northgate. I always wondered why there was never an Eastgate, and it's only when I became a postman I realised where it actually is. I'm going to leave via there this morning. Well, as I said, about 20 feet above it in fact. I'm now at Boatstall Lane, which is like a little alleyway between the Empire Hotel and the Bath Market, and it leads up to behind what used to be the Magistrates Court. And this is the site of the former East Gate. This arch down here, as you can see, is about 15-20 feet below, which gives you an idea of the old level of Bath. That is not the old Roman arch, that's the medieval one, but it's built on what I believe to be the site of the old East Gate through the Roman boundary wall. I'm going to be leaving via Eastgate behind, as close as damn it, over Pontley Bridge, then turn down Grove Street along the back of the River Avon, and then I'm going to be crossing Cleveland Bridge, which was thought to be an important junction of many Roman roads in Bath, and then turning right and heading eastwards out on the London Road, and I'll talk to you at the end of the London Road where the Fosseway is believed to have turned off. 2 places actually, so I'll explain that when I get there. I'm at the end of the London Road, and this is an old favourite spot of mine. This is the start of Foss Lane, which I thought until recently was where the original Fosseway went up, the original Roman road. You can see the modern Bannerdown Road has curved to ease the gradient. That is what I've always believed to be the old Roman road up there, but I've now come to question that. So I'm gonna cite 3 experts who did research on the ground in the 18th, 19th and early 20th century. And the reason their research is so valuable is basically because, yeah, okay, they didn't have the benefit of aerial photography, satellite imagery, laser mapping that we have these days, but what they had the benefit of was on the ground archaeology and research and just observation before all the A roads, the trunk roads were built, housing estates, golf courses. You get my drift. Richard Colt Hoare believed the line of the Fosseway pretty much followed the modern day, the present day Foss Lane. Thomas Coddington and Ivan Margary disagreed. They believed it was a little bit further along there, and then you turn left at Morris Lane, and that would take you straight up to join the modern day Bannerdown Road. So that's what I'm going to do today. Here is where the London Road intersects Morris Lane. It'd be very easy to miss, but to give you an idea, it's just before you drop down to the roundabout where the modern bypass comes in from the right and then carries on out towards Box. So that's it over there, Morris Lane. This version of the Fosseway, believed by Margaret and Coddington, is nicely tarmacked, much wider, more residential, heck of a lot easier to ride. That's comparing 2 modern versions. I can actually see with the incline why this one would win the argument, but I simply don't know enough about the history to have an informed opinion. Why did the 2 later geographers, historians, researchers change their mind? Did they have access to better maps? Or when was Foss Lane actually named? My heart says yes, it's Foss Lane, with all the steepness and the narrowness and the modern day references like Foss Cottage, Upper Foss House, that sort of thing. But my head says it's probably more likely to be this. I always did wonder how on earth things got up that steeper version up Foss Lane and beyond, and more importantly probably how they stopped on the way down. I've now reached the top of Morris Lane, and I have to say that was a lot smoother, wider, less steep. The road splits here in 3 at this triangle, so it's about to join the modern day Bannerdown, which leads up onto the Bannerdown summit and the line of the Fosseway that way. So if you wanted to go down Bannerdown Hill, you'd go left here. That way takes you out towards Box, and you can see there's a left-hand turning there, and that's the obvious course up onto Bannerdown if you wanted to go up there and carry on climbing. So that's the way I'm going to be doing. This way, then bearing left. So that's where Morris Lane joins the modern Bannerdown Road. I'm approaching the top, the summit of the modern day Bannerdown, where if this was the Roman road, it would have been the summit. If it had been coming in from over there via the Foss Lane direction, then through the woods and over Bannerdown Common, they would have both intersected up here. I'll stop there and do some filming there. The summit is around about 600 feet. As I said, we're approaching it. You can get an idea of how high up we are. This is the summit of the Bannerdown Road, and it now does follow ruler straight for miles and miles and miles. There's a very pronounced curve up here, the Agger. I'm going to try and film that along there a bit from the side on. But I've always believed this is where the Fosseway came in from Foss Lane across here and intersected and then carried on along there. I'm now starting to question. When I rode the Fosseway at that junction I spoke to at the bottom, I actually opted for Foss Lane and I emerged here, and as I was going up through these woods, there's one of these boards and it clearly sort of said the Roman road. So that would be it there coming up. And as the tarmac ends and it goes through that woodland, there's a board there that clearly says course of Roman Road, called Foss Lane, look. And this is the track I took through here, believing I'd successfully ridden up the Fosseway. I may have done, I don't know. This is the way I've just come. And as I said, as that road started to curve, there was a path going through there. That could well have been part of a straight route cutting that out, I don't know. It says here, look, Fosseway Road, continuing to Lincoln via Cirencester, but I don't think that's beyond any doubt. But was it that way or that way? My research notes say this stretch of the Fosseway has got a very raised agger between 5 and 6 feet. You can feel that you're raised up above the natural level of the ground. And I'm going to try and film that along here. You get up on this big escarpment, but then it's rolling through this valley, actually the Bybrook Valley. You cross it a couple of times. When I rode the entire length of the Fosseway, I found the hardest section without any doubt whatsoever was south of Shepton Mallet from Canard's Grave to this point. It was just up and down relentlessly, so things do get a little bit easier now. That's where I've just come from the Jib, just passed under the very busy motorway, M4. Bath, Bristol would be that way, Chippenham, London that way, and we're just turning off the tarmac road at Fossgate onto the first section of gravel. It's been so wet the last few days, I was expecting this section to be quite muddy. In fact, it's actually quite firm. The only thing is the potholes themselves are really full of water. I'm having to really concentrate to see where I'm steering. Get the idea. That was really nice encounter. The great thing about wearing this costume, yeah, it's a bit of a laugh and all that, and I often think if you were to trespass inadvertently, I think landowners are probably going to be a little bit more forgiving, you know, a bit of social lubrication if you dress like this. But also it just starts so many conversations. A lady saw me filming and she stayed back, and I sort of thanked her and we started to have a chat, and she was telling me At the Badminton estate, not far from here, they unearthed some kind of Roman villa or temple, she wasn't sure. They found some mosaics and then covered it over again, and then they revealed it again. Apparently an amateur archaeologist discovered that. She said she's also got a friend who's a discoverist. I've never heard of that before, but I think it means he's metal detector. And she said he found a big hoard, not here, but not far from here, of Roman coins. I feel a bit of a Burke just sometimes, but I also quite like the conversations it starts and the comments you get, and that was just a classic example of, you know, some really positive learning I've just done actually. I've just emerged from that first section of gravel. As it approaches the tarmac road, it in fact becomes metal itself, so I've just come from there behind me and I'm rejoining. This is the road where I left soon after passing down the M4 at Fossgate, so that goes off at quite a sharp angle, then bends and comes back. I'll put a diagram on the screen now. And then my course follows that now for about a mile or so north until we get to a T-junction stroke Roman crossroads. I've just ridden a very fast 2 miles heading north on this section of the Fosseway, which is tarmac, and then you arrive at a modern day T-junction. Shurston would be that way, Hallavington and Norton that way, but it's a Roman crossroads, carries straight on that way, unsurfaced. This will be the second section of unsurfaced gravel of the Fosseway today. It's coming up to 1 PM, I'm getting quite peckish, and we've arrived at a Roman milestone. Just come along this second bit of off-road gravel, and then you emerge on this S-bend. This road's going up to Easton Grey. So this minor road comes round here, then bends round to the left, and that's the way I'm going to be heading. If you were to carry on right on a minor track off this, that would be the Fosseway. So in effect the Fosseway runs straight on here, utilises about a couple of 100 yards of this tarmac, then carries on straight. Just as the road bends round to the left and the track of the Fosseway would carry on another section of gravel track, that would be the junction of Margarys 5. Margary numbers the main Roman roads in single digits, so the Fosseway is 5 for instance. I think this section is 5C because he breaks it up into chunks. This would be the junction of 5C of the Fosseway, and then it's going off onto a minor road, which is the one we're going to be taking over to the Severn estuary, Margary 543. Here we are, just a couple of 100 yards along from where I emerged on the gravel onto this S-bend, and as it starts to deviate round to the left sharply, I would say this is the junction of the Fosseway, which goes that way, and Margarys 543, which goes to Arlingham. And Margarys says in his classic work Roman Roads in Britain, I'll put the page number on the screen now, but Margarys believed this road, its purpose was to connect with the iron mines in the Forest of Dean. So it's now heading northwestish. We're going to follow this for the remainder of the day through Easton Grey. I'm going to try and work out how it went around a ridge. I'll explain that on the map when I find somewhere quiet and out the wind. Then we're going to go to Coley Peak, which is just past Nymphsfield. It's right on the other side of the Cotswold Escarpment. The modern road drops off that very steeply. I'll discuss there what Margarys believes happened, and then it travels through the Severn Vale. I'm going to pick up some supplies at Eastington, cross over the busy A38, which itself was following the route of a Roman road, and then into what's known as the Horseshoe Bend on the River Severn. Margarys believed there was a river crossing there. It would have either been a ferry or a causeway. So what should we call this? Junction 25 of the Fosseway, or should I say Junction XXV? Anyway, on that way. I'm now in Easton Grey, and I'm going to refer to Margarys 45B in the direction I'm coming from. So that was the start for the purposes of this video trip. It follows the course of a fairly straight line, and then it drops down into this valley. This is the Wiltshire Avon Valley. How lovely is this, look. All these Cotswold stone cottages, stone roofs. Wow, look at that, eh? If I'd carried on the Fosseway, that also crosses this little brook, this stream, and it's down in a little dip. On my Fosseway video, I think it was on day 2 or day 3, it's where I sat and had my lunch down by a Roman settlement. There's an information board down there telling you about it, and that's where the motorcycle went by with the sidecar with the man and his wife, and they got stuck going up the other side. Absolutely delightful bit of the Fosseway. I wonder if the people here know they're actually on a Roman road, or the course of a Roman road. Up to now, I expect the people who've seen me, the ones who don't think I'm a nutter, would probably realise, oh no, he's cycling the Fosseway. A lady this morning said, is it for charity? I said, no, I'm a student of history, and there's only so much you can learn from books. Now, it probably is going to be a little bit embarrassing, because I doubt if many people know I'm following the course of this Roman road. And just before I get to my wild camp tonight, I need to pick up some water and some supplies, so I've actually got to walk into a co-op dressed like this and do some shopping. I found a bus shelter with a seat in for my lunch. It's out of the wind, but unfortunately it's right next to a main road, so you may get some cars going by every now and again. Apologise for that. I brought 2 maps with me today. The Ordnance Survey Land Ranger series, 1 to 50,000 scale. Basically it's 1 inch to a mile. Sheet 173, Swindon and Devizes. So you can see I've marked the Fosseway on. This is its course. And that is where I headed from Cullen over the valleys. That's the gib there, under the motorway, and then on that first section of off-road. That was the 2 sides of the triangle I was avoiding. Then again up to here. And that's where I left the Fosseway on the S-bend, just before Easton Grey, and then I carried on round there. This map, I have to say, is actually falling apart, some sellotape on it, and there's quite a big overlap, so now's a good time to change maps. I'm going to go over onto sheet 162, Gloucester, Forest and Dean. So this one seems to have a lot of Margarys 543 on it, and again you see I've traced the rough course of it to the best of my knowledge in green highlight. So I'm on this main road here at Westonbirt, crossing the A433. You can see it followed a fairly straight course, and like a lot of Roman roads, you know, they do deviate, they do change angles, and then it goes along here. And this is a stretch I want to investigate this afternoon and try and work out what Margary meant. As I've already said, on page 144 of Roman Roads in Britain by Ivan Margary, he describes this road. He says, and I quote, its purpose would have been to connect with the iron mines in the Forest of Dean. Margary goes on to say, Easton Grey to Arlingham is 21 miles, and it branches northwestwards, passing close to Easton Grey House, which I did, and then along the east side of Westonbirt Park. That's where I am now. The grey area is Westonbirt, and you can see I'm passing along the east of it on this main road. That's the cars going by. I'm going to follow its course along there. Then I'm going to try and work out what Margary believed its course to be. I'm reading from notes here, so I'm quoting the book exactly. It says at Goss Covert, which I've circled there, east of Lasborough, road goes south of Kingscote Park. That's Kingscote Park, so yeah, it goes south of it. Following the ridge, and this cleverly avoids the deep valleys running southwards to Wootton Under Edge, there, and northwards through Nailsworth. So I'm not sure If it carries on here as the modern day road bends, there's a footpath along there, crosses the A46. I'm not sure if that's what Margery meant. It goes around there and then continues its course up there, or whether it's this yellow minor road which also crosses the A46, which in effect is still following the course of the straight line. One way or the other, it's crossing these deep valleys here at the top of a ridge. Whether it's that or that, I don't know. So that's what I hope to find out this afternoon on the next stage. Let's give you an idea of what I'm doing. That's the way I've come up, and I'll be following it straight on there. This is the A433 which it crosses, and I've just parked myself in this bus shelter here, which is why you'll hear traffic noise go by every now and again. So I am following the straight course straight along there, past the Hare and Hounds Hotel, and after lunch I'll be carrying on that way northwards. I'll maybe quickly explain why I sound a bit vague about this road. I'm going by the small amount of information from Margarys, Roman roads in Britain. There's literally just a couple of paragraphs about this road, because it is a fairly minor road. The information I normally access, there is actually a file for Margarys 543. How many pages there are to it, I don't know, but quite often it's at least a couple of dozen in previous instances. But every time I click the link, it would download the wrong file. It would download the file for 001. So whether it's a software problem or not, I don't know. I thought at first maybe it was my end. So I tried it on my phone, my tablet, my laptop, and then I tried logging in on my wife's Chromebook. None of them work. I was happy to come out and just get a feel for it anyway. So at some point I may be able to get more information later on. I would like to know more, but at the moment I can't access it. This is the course of Margarys 543. I've just come up past Weston Burke School. This is crossing the fairly busy Cirencester to Bath Road, the A433. And this is the way I'm heading, as you can see, straight on. Nice easy stretch straight after lunch. A couple of miles up to this ridge that I want to try and investigate. 543, what an amazing bit of Roman road. What a lovely scene. It's all the wild garlic. Not quite smelling yet, but I imagine it's not far off. Dry stone Cotswold walls, the moss on top, fields and fields of rapeseed about to burst into bloom. Another few weeks and this would just be a sea of yellow, that lovely rapeseed smell. I personally like it, I know not everybody does. Look at this, Margarys 543 heading towards the coast. I'm just riding this road with a completely new perspective actually. I'm heading along this bridge that I want to discover. Then I'm going to visit Nymphsfield picnic site overlooking the Severn estuary just before we drop down off the steep escarpment, head through the Severn Vale, pick up some supplies. I actually got most of the food I need. Ironically, I just need bread and water, or I'll pick up some beer as well, just so it doesn't sound too self-punishing. I've reached the end of Bowl Down Farm. This is where the footpath goes off. And I decided what I'd do is make my mind up what I was going to do when I get here. I've said before, trying to follow Roman roads too strictly, quite often making a rod for your own back. It just doesn't look like a very defined footpath. But I think what we're probably doing is aiming for that gap at the far right of the hedge there and in between the trees. But I'm going to avoid this, I think. So this does correspond with the map. There's a footpath here, you're at the end of the farm buildings, and the minor road that I'm on, which is very pleasant actually, bends around to the right. I'll show you on the map. Without more detailed information, I'm just not sure. As I said, the whole of this road is described in just a couple of paragraphs in Margary's book. I could really do with a comprehensive notes. It could be this going across here, crossing the A46. I'll be paralleling it anyway. And then that looks like you might be going through some private grounds. The reason I call these maps 1 inch to a mile, even though they're now metric, is because I tend to use my thumb to work out what is a mile, and that would be a mile going across fields, and then about another mile possibly through private property, there. So I think what I'm going to do is just go across here. I might pop at that left hand turn and see what that minor road looks like round there. I did route this ride along that footpath, so that one's got a lot of glare. Let's see if I can show this one. The dark is what I'm actually doing. The cursor is where I am now. The grey line is where the footpath goes, possibly the Roman road. So you can see they're running parallel. You get this gateway and I'm looking across at that. If that Roman road is over there on the footpath, it would be following that tree line along there through those woods, crossing the A46 in a quarter of a mile or so, as I'm going to do. It'll just be further south where it crosses. I'm heading this way. My gut says it's across there, but my head says you've got lost before trying to follow them too rigidly, so just maybe stick this main road for today. This is a section I'm not sure about, just half a mile or so, up to this crossroads, across the A46, Bath that way, Stroud that way. If that is the course of the Roman road, it'd be following that tree line at an angle, and I notice on the GPS it's starting to bend round to the right. In other words, starting to head in the direction we are, so we converge. I'll show you it's probably a bit clearer on the Garmin. Once again, the bold route is what I've taken, the cursor is where I am, and you can see the fainter line. That's how I mapped the route along that footpath, and it's starting to now turn due north. And then both this and that footpath will converge along there. Incidentally, how I map for bicycles along footpaths, I use the Ride with GPS mapping platform as my preferred choice, and I just add the layer for OSM. I think it's OSM Outdoor. I think that stands for open source mapping. There's an OSM cycle, but I just use OSM, and it will allow you to create a route along footpaths. And then once I've done that footpath route, I'll then put a control point at either side so it can't be adjusted, and then go back to the road map. Anyway, I'm going to cross the A46 here, down that minor road, across there. So I've now come along here and reached that left hand turn that I was going to go down and explore. That's down there towards Newington. It's right by this farm, Bowldown Farms Limited. This is Newington Farm. I've actually rejoined my planned route, so I am where the cursor is. I've been coming along this way. The thin grey line is where I'm heading, and that's the way I would have come along. That's via the footpath, so it looks like it got to a right hand turn. I'm just going to go down there just to see if you are on the edge of the ridge. Might be some good views down there. There may be a bit more evidence down there, whether that's rideable. I'm definitely going to come back here, have a go at riding that, but not on a camping trip. My curiosity got the better of me, and I'm so glad it did. I had to come down here. Not far, a few hundred yards, there's the farm buildings there. If you were to carry on down here, it looks like you're going to go into some private grounds. Possibly, or possibly not, I don't know, but look at that view. It's worth coming down here just for this. Really are on the edge of the ridge. As Margarys says, come along the ridge, cleverly avoiding those valleys. Wow. Definitely going to come back here and explore. If the Roman road did come along here, following the footpath, it would have come along there. I think that would have been quite hard work, to be honest. I'm not scared of hard work, but I just know on a camp trip, you really don't want to be losing couple of hours getting lost in woods like I've done before. That is the footpath. You can see it comes along. I'm not sure if that's that is a cropped field, so you have to be very careful you don't stray anywhere near the crops, but it does look like a defined footpath of sort. It's probably rideable. Can you get through? Yeah, it's just a rope gate. There's always the danger that you're padlocked in. You either have to go back, or worse still, sort of decant all the panniers off the bike, like lift the bike over, lift each of the panniers over. If it's wet, you risk slipping and hurting yourself. As I sort of said, sometimes it's just you're making a rod for your own back. I will come back here and explore. In fact, I'm going to come along here anyway, just because I want to go down there and explore all around here. Some people walking across the fields there, and I will try and resolve that issue about downloading the correct sheets for this route. Continued about another quarter of a mile along this road, and then you converge with the Dursley to Tetbury Road, the A4135. We're going to go left here for a bit as we skirt around Kingscote Park. I've turned left on this road. I'm right by the Hunters Hall public house, going along the edge of Kingscote Park. Stone bus shelter there. Kingscote Village is down there. Not today, because our route's going that way, but as a local rider I would say that is one of the best roads to cycle down there. It's called the Valley That Time Forgot, and as the name suggests, you drop down into a very lovely valley, and it's like going back in time. And it's not really a through road. You can walk and cycle along it. It's not much more than a farm track. The Valley That Time Forgot, highly recommended. Back to today, onwards this way for a few miles till we get to Coley Peak and then drop off this escarpment. I may start referring to this road as the Roman Road That Time Forgot. Just a few hundred yards after that pub, on the Tetbury to Dursley Road, you turn off right. In effect, line of sight is straight on, as you'd imagine with the Roman Road, so now on a quieter road. After about half a mile on this road, you go over a slight rise, and then you just definitely feel like you're dropping down. You really are on the ridge of all these undulations here. Starting to get views just beyond that tree line there. We'll get some cracking views of the Severn estuary. So when you come to this T-junction, it's a right. Just after passing through the wonderfully named hamlet of Cockadilly, you get to the bit I've really been looking forward to. We're about to drop off the ridge very steeply. Can you see we're coming up to a T-junction? It says scenic route either way. In effect, you're driving along the edge of the ridge. We're going to go straight over it and down, plunge down very, very sharply. Before we do that, I'm going to turn right here along that main road, a few hundred yards to a picnic site which has got fantastic views. Just ridden in, the road's just behind these bushes, come into the car park, Coley Peak Nature Reserve, get a load of that view. Wow. Just look at this amazing view looking down there, and that's where we're heading, and that's where the Roman road went as well. I'll talk to you shortly on the picnic seat about what Margarys says here. We came up that crossroads, turned right and came along here, so we need to go back that way, and then you can see it drops down sharply, a few hundred feet already, and then it goes along the bottom of this hillside, carries on dropping very steeply down through Froster and then through Eastington. You can see the slither of the Severn there. It's lovely today. So a quick refresh of what we've done. That is where I told you outside that pub about the Valley That Time Forgot. That's that road. Went along there, turned off the A road, got on this B road and then turned off that. There's quite a slog along here actually, and we're now here. And then Margaret continues about Coley Peak. This descends directly by a finely engineered zigzag, almost certainly of Roman type, and continues on the same course below. So he's saying it drops, I think, basic hairpins down here. I think they call it terracing, don't they? people who know more about Roman roads than me would be able to answer that question. Even the tarmac road I'm going to take down can be a little bit scary at times actually. It's certainly a grind coming up. But to think the Roman road went straight off here zigzagging, it just beggars belief really. Margarys believes the iron road dropped straight off this escarpment, zigzagging down there. And then that road eventually as it curls round will follow the course. So can you imagine going straight down here zigzagging? Wow, just beggars belief really, doesn't it? Just going to stay here a little bit longer. I was hoping there might be an ice cream line up here, but I think we're too early in the season for it. Retrace back to the crossroads. Now I'm starting the sharp descent down signpost here at Nymphsfield, Dursley 4, Ewley 2, Stroud 5. Just about to see the cars in the middle distance. So we've dropped quite a bit already. We're going to descend very rapidly now. You pass some sheer rock faces on that side you come down. This is about the first place it's safe to stop. And there's looking back at where I was. Load of tubes up there. That's where I was about 5 or 6 minutes ago. And it just carries on plunging down. Now we're much further down. This was about the only other place I could think of to stop that's safe. So looking back at it out there. Imagine the road coming down there. This is looking over the Vale and the estuary. Look at that. Up through the Berkeley or Severn Vale you've got the M5, the A38 and of course the mainline railway heading up to Gloucester. So we're still continuing zig-zag down and then we'll eventually get on a very long straight road once it flattens out at Foster. I've been looking all along this road for any form of reference to it being a Roman road. I'm not saying there aren't any, it's just I haven't seen any until now. I think Cester is the same as Chester. It represents a Roman settlement or a fortification. I came in from Foster that way, I'm heading that way, but I've just stopped at the co-op at Eastington. I knew this is here, I've used this many times before. I only really needed bread and water for my food because I bought most things with me, but as usual I bought tons of other stuff. I was hoping to get an ice cream there, but I couldn't find one there either. But I've got my water, I've got an energy drink for now, a sticky cake, some munchies later on just in case I get hungry at night. No Roman beer, but I'll get 2 bottles of Peroni Italian, next best thing. Now I've got to try and somehow get that into my panniers. First up though, fizzy drink just to replenish some energy and a sweet sticky cake. A quick refresh of what I've done and where we are then. So that was the escarpment there, with all those contours tightly packed. Went along to the picnic site on that green next to the Brown Road, then retraced back to that junction there and dropped down steeply. And then you continue the course of Margarys Road, so you can see what Margarys suggested. It went straight over, possibly zigzagged down off that cliff. And he says in his book, Margarys, and I quote, "The present Foster Hill is probably a coaching improvement of the older route." Occurred to me when I took that photograph at Foster, if that is a Roman association and it was a fortified place, well it probably would be, wouldn't it, if they're transporting imported commodities up over there. Margarys says at Eastington the present road diverges west to join the Bristol to Gloucester road. Margarys calls it 541. In effect it's the A38, but it went down to Sea Mills, which is basically in Bristol, and then up to Gloucester. So we're going to do that, join that. Whether the original road went that way or not I don't know, because there is actually a footpath, but clearly that's just out of the question trying to get across there, because that's the modern day M5. So I'm going to go over the M5, join the A38 and then head towards my destination, past Frampton on Severn. Now I need to turn the map over. And then instantly you're onto the Horseshoe Bend. Can you see where the River Severn snakes around, meanders? So I've marked it that way. I'm going to avoid that because that would mean going across farmland, and I don't want to do that. Even if it's possible, I don't want to do it. this late in the day. It could well have come up here and changed direction. And I'm going to go along to there, and that's Newnham, where I was recently on Margarys 60A, up at that amazing church, looking down on this. Go along there, probably get a few comments at the pub. I've got my own beer, so I don't need to go in there. And then I'm going to just follow this footpath down here and camp along here somewhere. So, just the other side of Easington, I come up to the A38. I'm going to turn right on that and then left down to the Horseshoe Bend. But this will be my third Roman road of the day. Very, very briefly, I'm going to be turning onto Margarys 541, Gloucester, down to Sea Mills, Bristol that way. Direction change then, just where those traffic lights are up there, where the bus is turning left, come that way. This is Margarys 541, and I'll be taking this left-hand turning. As you can see, signposted to Arlingham. This is the start of the Horseshoe Bend. Be nice to get off this road. It's not too bad, it's just got its own designated cycle space. I'm now crossing the Gloucester Sharpness Canal on the final leg to Arlingham. So that's looking north up to Gloucester and back down that way. I'm going to be heading down that towpath tomorrow. Oh, that side I think it is. I'm going to take that down to Sharpness and try and locate a Victorian railway crossing over the Severn, which doesn't exist any longer. Tell you the story about that, and also visit a graveyard of ships and plus 3 churches, but that's going to be a different video for tomorrow. Meantime, you can see the main traffic's going to bear around to the right, and we're going straight on here, last couple of miles to Arlingham. Just passed through the village of Arlingham, past a very busy looking pub. It's a lovely spring evening. People have sat outside. You can imagine the looks and the comments I got as I went by. All very nice. So I'm just heading out now to Arlingham Passage. Oh yeah, alright. It's a lovely evening. I'm really looking forward to camping, especially with my Peroni beers. I've got a chicken breast. I'm going to dice it up tonight and have sweet and sour chicken and rice and Peroni beer. Okay, it's not Roman, but it's Italian, isn't it? That'll do. Just savouring this last mile or so. Really, really nice. Oh, I can see over to the A48 what I rode recently, Newnham. Approaching very rapidly. Oh yeah, right. From this angle, the road just looks like it carries on towards those hills, and you get the feeling, well, there must be a road either snaking up over them or going alongside the foot of them, and there is, but there's a Severn estuary in between. As I was going up Morris Lane this morning, I was cutting up through that residential street up to Bannerdown Hill. I kept hearing horses. I think they come out from farms adjacent and then carry on up. This is really, really nice. Lovely way to finish, actually. I'm going to stop here and just give way to them. I love that sound. Horse hoofs on tarmac. That was nice. Just stopped to have a brief chat with those 2 ladies. I gave way. I just suddenly thought, I'll try not to startle the horses with my movement and the sound. I suddenly realised possibly the red would do it anyway, but they're okay, and the ladies were thinking exactly the same as well. It's really nice to stop and have a friendly chat like that. Last couple of 100 yards just up to the edge of the Severn. When I say a couple of 100 yards, I should probably say leagues or chains or something, shouldn't I? There's a farm over there. There are a couple of official campsites. I think that's one of them. The other one's much further down. But I fancy wild camping tonight. I've just seen cars going along on the far bank, a reflection on the A48, Margarys 60A that I rode recently. Oh, this is wonderful. I'm really, really savouring this running. So, mission nearly accomplished. Set off from Sulis Minerva Temple, the pump rooms in Bath, up the Fosseway, tried an alternative opinion of how it actually climbs out of Bath, and then rode the Fosseway up to Easton Grey, and then took a left. Oh, there we go, Old Passage Inn, and here we are, the end of the road. This is it, Old Passage. Where Margarys believes the Romans crossed. That church up there was the one I visited on the A48 just a couple of weeks ago. I've got my binoculars with me, as I said. I'm going to have a really good look down there. First up, I'm going to wander down to that seat. End of the road then. As I understand it, this used to be a drover's road in ancient times. Whether that's before the Romans or after the Romans or both, I'm not sure. I will go and have a look at that signpost, that information board shortly, see if there's any reference to this being a Roman road. But as I understand it, there used to be a ford here. It's a very dangerous one. You can see it's very tidal, but you could actually walk across there with your sheep to market at low tide. Plenty of people drowned apparently. And there was a storm in 1802 or 1803, I think, and it washed all that away, and it just became treacherous to cross. Some people still used to try it. My friend Brian said one of his friend's dad walked across once, but plenty of people have lost their lives across there. So the storm of 1802/1803, whenever it was, changed the course of the mud banks and washed the old Drover's Road away. So how the Romans crossed, I don't know. Whether it's a ferry or they used the causeway or not, I don't know. Again, I'm hoping I'll get access to these files sooner or later. And then there was actually a ferry across here, and I believe that ran until just after the Second World War, when the last ferryman died and nobody took it over. You can see walking across that, even at fairly low tide, that would be absolutely a death trap trying to go across there. A lovely spot on the Severn, eh? Looks like you could almost throw a stone across, so near yet so far. And then of course, in the early 1800s, they tried to dig a tunnel underneath here, just along there I believe. An engineer called Roger Tipping had successfully dug a tramway tunnel through a hill over there called Bullow Pill to get the coal up here to Gloucester. And of course they wanted to try and avoid the tolls going up to Gloucester, so they hired him to dig a tunnel underneath the Severn here. I think that pub was actually built for the travellers. Once it opened, they got halfway across, and on Friday the 13th of November they were about halfway across. There was a catastrophic breach and the tunnel just flooded, and some of the workers barely got out with their lives. So there's been plenty of crossings here. As I said, Margarys believes the Romans crossed here. Whether it's a ferry or a ford, I don't know. So you can see the outline of the horseshoe there. I believe Margarys 543 probably came in along here, which meant using farm tracks and footpaths. I didn't do that. I actually came in on this lower road and then just joined it coming into Arlingham. There was the red line, that was the pub where I got a lot of attention going by. And here we are, the Old Passage Inn. I think that was built especially for all the custom they expected from the tunnel that failed. And there it says Arlingham Passage. And I was just on the other side of that a few weeks ago, that picnic site. Way. So yeah, just a quarter of a mile or so down here somewhere, away from people. I'll be putting my tent up. And I've just checked the time and it's 6:15. Probably ride along there actually, yeah I think so. And then just drop down onto the grass. The Severn Way. I've put my tent up. It's about 20 past 7. I think I better get changed, so I'm just going to go and jump into something a bit more discreet. There we have it, sweet and sour chicken on a bed of rice. Well, my phone says it's just gone 10 p.m, although the clock on the church on the other side of the river struck 10 about 3 or 4 minutes ago, so one of us is wrong. I was expecting sort of old wooden barge types. I didn't realise they'd be quite this big. Wow, look at that one. That looks like it's rammed straight in, gosh. Wow, I wasn't sure what to expect, to be honest.